CISOs still will stand in front of boards of directors or the C-suite and talk about security or talk about risk management. And these are boring topics to the people sitting around that table whose main interest is to create new revenue or open new markets or, a couple of folks to cut costs. But most people want to make money.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Google Chrome Enterprise is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Steve Hunt, Executive Coach for IT at Impact Leaders.
I grew up as a locksmith. My dad was a locksmith. My grandfather on the other side was a locksmith. And I worked my way through college and graduate school locksmithing. But when the professors weren't looking, my buddies and I were unscrewing the backs of these newfangled computer things. And I spent my early years in college building PC clones until one of my first jobs after grad school was working at a board of trade somewhere. And our bulletin board server got hacked. And I knew computers and I thought, oh, this is fun. I'm going to figure out what that was. And we didn't even have the word hacked in those days. It's just as we're trying to figure out how is the data gone and the syslog is deleted. Some old timer leaned over my shoulder as I was sitting on the floor under the desk, which is where the bulletin board server was. And he said, looks like you got a security problem with your computer. And Todd, oh my gosh, it was like the heavens opened, like the angels started singing. I thought, oh my gosh, I love computers and I know security. So I transformed in that moment to be a cybersecurity, IT security professional. I didn't even know what that was, but started that journey and rode the wave of IT security to this day.
That's an amazing story. And I just have to tell you, and you would probably appreciate this as a locksmith, but my grandfather invented this company called the Badger Safe Protector Company of Wisconsin. And we built little tear gas devices. And it was a very complex device. It had a metal casting with some rubber stoppers on it and that were filled with tear gas, and it held 4 tubes of tear gas and a little metal disc. And it was mounted on the back of a safe. And when the burglar would try to knock off the dial, the little disc would fly into the glass, very high tech, and would break the tear gas. And then the burglar would go away. And we had these installed in safes all over the United States. And I was reading a few years back that an article in one place, they said, if you see one of these little protected by Badger Safe Protector Company on the outside of a safe, do not open it, call the bomb squad, because it is disintegrated into this level of nitroglycerin.
Oh my God.
It's very explosive. And so we had that business for years. And as a kid, I used to have to can this tear gas to ship it, because if a vial broke, you'd have a real problem. But the funniest thing about the locksmith is my dad had this safe, and it was one of these huge, it stood about 5 feet tall. And I don't know where he got this safe, but when we had our house built, the safe, they had a crane lower the safe into the basement because it was too heavy to take down wooden steps to the basement. And it sat down there. And so my parents were in that house for 45 years. And when we sold the house after my mother passed away, we had to put in the contract, the safe stays with the house. And my dad had opened it one time, and then he closed it, but then he didn't write down the combination. So we had to hire a locksmith to open it. We didn't know what was in the safe. And it was like the Geraldo with the Al Capone safe.
Exactly.
We opened it up and there was nothing inside.
That's a lot of fun. All right.
So I love locksmiths. I saw all the little flyers my dad had as a kid that were all targeted at locksmiths because they were the ones installing these devices all over the place.
Oh yeah, we sure were. Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about our leadership lessons today. You've been talking with a lot of CISOs and talking about creating championship results, breaking the bank without breaking the bank or rocking the boat. And I love the title because it obviously goes back to your locksmith days. So walk us through that. What sort of things have you learned?
I've had the privilege, Todd, of working with literally hundreds of organizations around the world. And they would hire me hoping that I would help them to identify what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong so they could do more of the right things and less of the wrong things. And it was like finding the secret sauce of what creates excellent performance and resilience. Resilience meaning the company, the organization can take a hit and take a licking and keep on ticking. Organizations that are so well run that a data breach is de rigueur. It's okay. They can handle it. Their ducks are in a row. But not every organization has that. And I learned that over the time that it wasn't a matter of having the right technology. It wasn't even the right people and process. I thought, people, process, and technology was the key. And for years, I preached that to my clients, only to discover that there were other pieces that created ultimate performance, ultimate resilience. Things like, you're familiar, Todd, have you heard of the Baldrige performance excellence? Yeah. So that's
a long time ago. I used to teach the TQM stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's along the same line.
Stuff, yeah.
Right. So Baldrige is the granddaddy of performance excellence in the U.S. government. It's part of NIST, which is part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And it's a standard for creating performance excellence. Well, it turns out that the most highly resilient organizations also follow either Baldrige or some other standard of performance excellence, along with having people and process and technologies in place. And yet, not all of those were still the most resilient organizations. There was a third ingredient that once an organization discovered what that ingredient was and sprinkled it on like pixie dust on their organization, suddenly they got the great results. And for years, I couldn't see what that last ingredient was. The other ones were more self-evident. But it took a while to discover it. When I did, I felt again like, okay, we're onto something really important. But I got to tell you why I couldn't see it. Let me tell you why I couldn't see it, even though it was right in front of my eyes. I asked my clients over the years, what did they, if anything, enjoy about working with me, Todd? And they never said, this is my confession, my true confession. They never said, Steve, it was because you know security so well, or you know IT so well, or you're so good at data protection, or anything like that. They always said, Steve, it's because you helped us get buy-in for that big project from senior management. You helped us get the budget approved. You helped us get a new headcount. One guy said, because you saved my marriage. Slowly the fog started to clear that what I was doing was something that was aligned with the most resilient organizations. And that is having excellent communication, you might say, or connection or EQ, some combination of this soft skills that were allowing cybersecurity departments to connect with the rest of IT, the end users, senior management, and create a feeling of team across the whole organization. That seems to make the biggest difference in any organization.
It seems like a lot of CISOs today struggle with that, or you hear that, I'm not getting the budget, I'm not getting the attention of the board, I really don't have that seat at the table. So what sort of things should the CISO be doing? How do you build this connection or that capability that you brought into organizations?
Well, Todd, you're probably one of the greatest spokespersons on how to get a seat at the table. You've been so successful at it over your career. From my point of view, I would highlight a couple of things. See, we're past the time. We're past the days when CISOs strictly came up through the tech ranks, and then they're just technologists at the Peter Principle. They've been advanced to the level of their incompetence. We're past those days now. Now CISOs are sophisticated, articulate, educated women and men who know how to do security well and how to connect with other people. The missing piece is a lot of CISOs are great at talking about security, even if they talk about security in business terms, even if they talk about it in terms of financial impact, all of these business flavored language. But what they don't do, most CISOs don't do, is enroll. They don't enroll senior management into a vision of what's possible together if we work together. CISOs still will stand in front of boards of directors or the C-suite and talk about security or talk about risk management. And these are boring topics to the people sitting around that table whose main interest is to create new revenue or open new markets or, a couple of folks to cut costs. But most people want to make money. And the CISOs generally don't tune into that. And they don't enroll.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. And a lot of the business leaders are risk takers by definition, right?
Yes, exactly.
We're coming in with this
risk avoidance
message.
Exactly. It's the worst message at all. I used to tell my CISO clients, purge the word security from your vocabulary. I mean, everybody at that table thinks security is an annoying layer of cost and inconvenience. Don't even say the word. And so for years, they thought, okay, I'm not going to say security anymore. I'm going to say risk management because it sounds more businessy. And that was just a pseudoscience that did not get us very far. It's a way of couching security investments in kind of business ease, but it's not enrolling. It's not exciting. It doesn't sound revenue generating. So it's still a big challenge.
It's funny, you just mentioned the Peter Principle, and which was created by Tom Peters, who also created the 7S model, which I adapted to cybersecurity, which is the genesis for the CISO Compass book. So it's
awesome.
This is funny how these things all tie together. So should we be calling this something else when we walk into the boardroom besides security, risk management? How should we be presenting ourselves to deliver the right message?
The best example I ever heard was from Rhonda McLean when she was at Bank of America. She stood up on the stage and she described security. She said, "Why do we have brakes on a car? Why do we have brakes on a car?" And I and everybody else said, "To stop." And she said, "Well, if we wanted to stop, we would just not go anywhere in the first place. So don't talk to me about how the brakes on the car are there for us to stop. Brakes are there for us to drive fast, for us to drive aggressively even. So security is like the brakes on a car for an organization. They are there to create the possibility for the organization to move aggressively in a competitive market with potholes and state troopers and competitors all over the place and zig and zag through the traffic of their competition with complete confidence, driving as fast as they want." This plants the seed. That thinking plants the seed of how we can talk about security as a value creator. That's the start.
It's funny you mentioned brakes. I just got back from the Indy 500 a week ago, and I've gone there almost every year for the last 2 decades, and I don't think they use their brakes. I mean, they're all going about 230 miles an hour.
Imagine how hot those brakes would stop when they come into the pit.
Yeah, and it's probably the least favorite tool on their car they like to use. I think they love that accelerator pedal, and I think that's how our businesses are. So what does a CISO do to develop the right skills for this? Because we still seem to be focused on the security stuff, and we're all talking about security and we talk about business enablement, but how do we make that shift?
Well, there are several different themes that I work with my clients on. And one of them is what I've heard called, and I've now adapted the term, style flexing. And that's for understanding that people have different personalities, and that can make it challenging for individuals to be understood, to get their point across, to get their message to land. And a lot of IT professionals, CISOs included, are analytical in their personality. And that's a very matter-of-fact way of talking. Sometimes it's a bullet point way of talking. It's not always how you talk, Todd. You have learned how to add color and flavor and even flair to how you communicate. And it's not to put on a show. It's to connect with people. And so learning how, it's actually a skill. You can learn how to do it in a few days and practice it. Personality style flexing makes a huge difference. And so does enrollment. Enrollment is a skill. It's a way of communicating. It's a way of getting your point across in an enrolling fashion. It's a way of painting the picture of a vision of what's possible and attracting other people to the vision and saying, "Ooh, I want that too," or "I want something like that." And let's all march together to the beat of the same drummer. Those are two of the skills or approaches that CISOs can take today to upskill themselves, to uplevel themselves and their teams. Every member of a cybersecurity team can have the same skills of personality style flexing and enrollment to improve listening, to improve speaking, to improve conflict resolution, to make the team feel like they're all working toward the same goal, the same championship goal. And it makes a big impact.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I'm kind of a junkie with all the personality stuff. I think if you look at my bookshelf behind me, half of it are leadership books and personality preference books, the MBTI, the DISC profiles, the Enneagrams, all that kind of stuff. The more we can understand each other, I think is valuable. And also the differences between the generations, because there are differences in good ways, but they're just different in how each of us grew up. And do you see any differences there, with the CISOs of the upcoming generations versus the prior generations?
That's so beautiful that you mentioned that. First, about the DISC and Enneagram and those things. It's one thing to take the test to find out what your personality type is. It's another to integrate it into every conversation you have for the rest of your life. That's the piece that I've never seen done except at the most resilient organizations. The next point you made, though, is the word diversity popped into mind, and it has two flavors in my view. One is our CISOs today, the ones coming up through the organization, are from extremely diverse backgrounds. Humanities majors, accounting majors, and people from every country on earth. This creates already a fresh approach. And then there's another diversity that's happening. And I'm seeing it even among white male CISOs. They are attracting, hiring, and embracing a culturally diverse workforce. And it creates magic, Todd. And I know you've seen this. Many people listening to this have seen it firsthand, but may not have so much diversity on their teams. Let me tell you, let me just tell you, cut to the punchline. Having a diverse, culturally and age diverse, cultural, gender, and age diverse cybersecurity team creates absolute magic. You will solve problems in the freshest way, sometimes much faster, much more inexpensively, and it will give you much more content for your enrollment campaign when you enroll senior leadership in your vision.
Yeah, we've done several podcasts now on diversity and inclusion, specifically, targeted on that issue. And I know I've mentioned before the Cybersecurity Collaborative, which sponsors this podcast. We look back at the initial board that we had created, and it was embarrassingly non-diverse. Okay, there were 7 white men.
Oh yeah.
And 1 woman on it. Okay, and we said we understand that the industry is not 50-50 at the top level yet. We haven't achieved that yet. But if we're going to lead out and lead to promote CISOs to be this diverse community, we need to set that example. And it was difficult, but it was myself and a couple other people that we took this board, and we didn't get rid of the 7 white males. We expanded the board to a 15-member board, and we intentionally made it a diverse board, highly qualified people on this board, but we have the diversity of thought, and that's what drives. It's so much richer than the board that we started off with. I just have to say that it is so much richer.
I totally believe that.
So this has been great, Steve. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I think we could go on for quite some time here. But what sort of final advice would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs, as they're going down this journey in their organizations?
The HR department and LinkedIn both have lots of learning resources for training IT teams on communication. It's been my experience that generic communication and EQ training doesn't land with a lot of analytical personalities that we find in IT. So look for training that is tuned to the IT personality. And there's plenty of it on LinkedIn, and ask your HR department to dig deep to find IT-oriented training. And it's going to transform. Like within weeks, you'll see members of your team communicating differently with one another, getting problems solved more quickly, taking more initiative, being responsible, and being the kind of person who has unbreachable integrity, doing what they said they would do, when they said they would do it, the way they said they would do it every time. That's the kind of culture you want to cultivate. And people want to be that way. They just get to be exposed to those ideas.
I think that's great. And I think, the way you painted that picture there, who wouldn't want to go work for a company that is full of employees like that?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's a resilient organization.
Thanks much, Steve. It's been a joy talking to you today.
Real pleasure, Todd.
Thank you. Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the browser that will secure your organization without the added expense and complexity of additional browsers. Its simplified management features will free up your team to focus on critical security tasks that can be overlooked because of time and attention it takes to manage other solutions. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome now to start protecting your organization like never before.